it's very impressive all around. I mean, the equipment and the speed and the power that this boat's got is unbelievable. I mean, you know, we used to think our other boat was powerful and fast, but I mean, it's a different class again, this, and you know, we're over the moon. And the first impressions, I mean, we're really, really proud of her, and you know, she'll do justice when we get her home.
But the future of the new Lifeboat's home station is uncertain. The Victorian defences that have protected Spurn for 150 years are crumbling. They will not be replaced.
This last 7 to 10 years has been particularly bad, when the old sea defences built by the military over 140, 150 years ago began to crumble, and we've seen over 100 metres lost. They talk about the Holderness coast losing an average of 1.5 metres a year, but averages are a nonsense when we saw last year as much as 20 and 25 metres go from some parts of Spurn. The government has said that concrete or hard sea defences are no longer an acceptable solution in the UK. We know that it's useless to try and oppose the forces of nature. We hope that our scientific advisors are right, that there's a future, there will be a Spurn Peninsula of some kind in the future. It may or may not be able to support a road, but the Trust will continue to do its best at Spurn.
The end of another school day, and Spurn's children return to the point after a 6-mile bus ride along the road that is their community's only link with the outside world.
Have you had a nice day?
Yeah, it's on beach. But where's this attractive?
The pride of the Humber arrives home at last.
They are a small crew, totally dedicated, totally committed, highly professional, as you would expect from people who are doing it full time, and they get on exceedingly well with one another.
I think well, all the lads are doing brilliant now. It's, you know, you get to do the different positions as well. You know, it's good. It's an all-round vessel, yeah, it's good.
Very nice, beautiful seats, comfortable, spring-loaded for when we get on the rough stuff. Just a bit warm.
Now look at the welcoming committee here. Both piers, look, chocker with people.
At Spurn's jetty, 2 lifeboats, the old and the new, lie side by side.
Cheers to the pride of the Humber.
What can you say? Just have to look at the beams on our faces as we come round the point.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant boat. Fantastic run home.
So I was pointing southwest.
That's right.
Right, yeah,
Smile.
good? Yeah.
I think we've all missed the kids. Ever such a lot. And the wife. But don't tell her that.
I'm just sink full, I can't believe it. Must be a softy pill bit.
Spurn has been breached several times, and we've been able to maintain the station. But if the breach was to be of such a nature that Spurn Head was to become an island, our long-term thinking is that then the property, which is currently used by the crew members and their family, would then serve as dormitories, and we would probably then have to work 2 crews, one spending maybe a week or a fortnight on the island and being relieved by another crew.
I've been here a long while now, I suppose. I mean, just over 22 years here now, so... And the point now is very fragile, isn't it, as you can see. I mean, in places now there's just no defence left at all. Virtually it's a road along a sandbank, if you like. There's no defence at all, so... We only used to worry on the big tides if it was bad weather about the road. I mean, now we're permanently sort of worried about the road. Last year there was no access by a car. We hired Land Rovers in, four-wheel drive vehicles, because the majority of the time we were virtually driving over sand.
But the accepted view is that the point itself is secure.
There's been no known erosion in the last half mile of Spurn in living memory. So I'm very happy that the people who work and live at the point are safe and their operations can continue there, really as long as they wish them to continue and are prepared to pay for them.
But this man believes modern scientists have forgotten the lessons of history. George de Boer believes a 1992 report on Spurn, on which its future is being planned, is fundamentally flawed.
In due course, several decades perhaps, the ground will be washed from underneath them. They'll have to move. Because, as the present situation has shown, it no longer seems to be regarded as practicable to maintain Spurn in its present position. And I do not agree with the 1992 report that the tip of Spurn has been relatively stable. Not only has the tip moved southwestwards as the peninsula has grown, but also it has moved westwards.
This is the first I've heard of it. My advice, the advice I've been given, has been clearly on the assumption that the head is stable and everything else will rotate round Spurn Head.
But George de Boer says historical evidence suggests the sea may not be as kind to Spurn as many experts believe. He fears its natural cycle will reduce the head to an island, with consequences the Victorians well knew.
This is a copy of part of the chart of the Humber produced by Captain Calver, showing Spurn at the time of the breach. Here is Spurn Island. The actual breach happened in December 1849. Some eyewitnesses said there were tidal streams of up to 6 or even 7 knots going through the breach, and some boats were beginning to use that opening. They feared that if Spurn was breached, there might be diversion of ebb tidal streams through other channels, and they might be faced with big dredging problems. And so they decided that before there was serious damage, they'd close the breach. And they were, perhaps what we're not doing today, putting in the stitch in time. If the breach was near enough the tip and developed into a tidal channel on the scale of the 1849-1850 events, it could be devastating. The more so because of the very large size of ships now using the river.
Our research has shown that we don't think that even a breach of the type that you have described, and we don't think is on the cards, but even a breach of that type would not materially affect the channels in the river itself.
But some scientific evidence supports those who say Spurn's outlook is grim. Close Up North's obtained a copy of a report compiled by the government's own hydrological experts who concluded that a breach of the head would lead to unpleasant consequences with effects on the estuary that would be difficult to control. Its author, Dr. Alan Brampton, says a breach could lead to port authorities having to dredge the Humber at a cost of millions of pounds.
I would think probably before the turn of the century a breach would develop. I guess it probably wouldn't be very deep. You'd possibly still get down to the end of Spurn by foot at low water. If it wasn't artificially restored, then it was likely to slowly widen. Now that would cut off access to the southern end of Spurn, obviously, quite quickly. And then possibly we would get bigger waves in the Humber estuary and eventually perhaps greater tidal flows. That could bring around quite a lot of changes, for example, in the defences on the northern shore of the Humber, and possibly even on defences over on Cleethorpes and the Grimsby side of the estuary. If a deep channel starts developing, crossing the line of the present Spurn Head, the water emptying and filling the Humber will split itself between this new channel and the existing one. There's a danger then that the existing channel will suffer siltation, the water depths will decrease, and there'll be an increased need for dredging to keep the situation as it is today. There's quite a lot of damage that could occur.
It's going to go eventually, but I mean, we'll just go with the flow, I would imagine. You know, if we have to move off, we have to move off. It'll always be a lifeboat station, I would think.
Morning, Karen.
Morning, John.
All right,
yeah.
The bill for you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah,
bye.
Okay, bye. I've made a life down here now, and, you know, I really do love it, and I think when that day comes, it'll be a very sad point.
When it's a really bad day, you suffer. You can't go out the house because there's sandblasting everywhere. If it's raining, there's nowhere to go, and it can be a very sort of tight, horrible place. Well, then again, if you get a day like today, go for a little walk round, batteries are recharged, life's brilliant again. There isn't enough being done. For the lifeboat and the pilot's point of view, we do need that link to the mainland. And I've said many times before, we know Spurn's a beautiful place, it's a nature reserve, site of special scientific interest, but it's also base to the busiest lifeboat in the country, 170 pilots working the river, so I think you must have a balance of the two.
So, should communities like Spurn Point be protected from the sea, or do economics dictate that we can no longer afford to hold back the waves? Have your say on your BBC local radio station in the Close Up North phone-in. The number to call is Leeds, that's 0113 244 3222, and the lines are open now.